All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Mindgasms. I am Andrew, aka Pro Free Speech Anti Trump Mindgasms, and I'm going to talk about the recent news about Elon Musk letting Trump back on Twitter, and the surprising fact that I actually agree with the conservative pundit Ben Shapiro about it, in spite of the fact that I disagree with almost all of his takes because I find them to be tremendously stupid often. But yeah, I'm going to comment on this video with Ben Shapiro sharing his thoughts on former American President Donald Trump being let back on Twitter by Elon Musk because he, of course, finally bought Twitter and he is acting in a very authoritarian way in terms of who he is banning and unbanning. Like, for example, banning Kathy Griffin because she made a parody account of him, and also that guy from the H3 podcast. But he let Kathy Griffin back on, and he let Trump back on. I think he let Jordan Peterson back on, maybe. Who those five of you who regularly watch my videos know that I often criticize Jordan Peterson for his stupid takes too. But anyway, let's get into Squeaky Ben Shapiro, as Kyle Kulinski calls him, talking about Trump being put back on Twitter. For the record, just on that tangent, both the progressive Kyle Kulinski and conservative Ben Shapiro mostly agree about Trump, not that Trump shouldn't be banned on Twitter because they're pro free speech, even though Kyle in particular doesn't like Trump, and I don't either. So that's why I have a similar take. Anyway, let's get to it.
Okay, so over the weekend, Elon Musk did a public poll of people at Twitter, followers of Twitter, who should Donald Trump be allowed back on the service or not? And like 51 to 49, it went that Trump should be allowed back on the service. Now, was Elon Musk not going to allow Donald Trump back on the service if the votes had come in against Donald Trump? I have significant doubts. I think that Musk was going to let Trump back on Twitter. He's a presidential candidate. He shouldn't have banned from Twitter in the first place. Musk has a broader version of free speech than his predecessors over at Twitter. For what it's worth, by the way, Musk is also saying that he's not going to allow Alex Jones back on Twitter, to Alex Jones's anger and consternation. I will say this for Elon Musk. What Elon Musk is doing is he's basically taking sort of personal accountability for who is let back on and who is not let back on. He says, you have questions, come to me, which actually is a more honest standard than what Twitter was doing. Twitter was presenting a false objective version of what was allowing people to get banned or not. Musk is just saying, listen, I'm the king over here, and that means I'm the Cotty under the tree. You come to me, you ask, and maybe I'll let you back on. But at least he's taking account.
So this is like actually the opposite of the way that he's describing it, though. He's doing it on his personal whims, like just like Trump in some ways. Hey, listen, okay? If you like me, then I'm gonna be nice to you. If you are not nice to me, then I won't be nice to you. I demand loyalty, okay? And yeah, it sounds like Elon Musk is actually doing it this way. And this whole conservative trope of Elon Musk being like this super genius free speech hero, I think is really dumb and stupid. I don't think he's actually like a pro free speech radical. I think like I said, he's just been basically operating on his personal whim. And I think and I don't know what evidence Ben Shapiro has to support his claim that he thinks Elon Musk would have let Trump back on Twitter even if this poll were the opposite and people on Twitter did not vote for it. And I don't know. I guess I would agree with what he's implying there, that Alex Jones is perhaps more morally reprehensible than Trump, but I don't know. It depends on how you look at it. Like, he infamously rather, recently had to pay out tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars to the victims of the Sandy Hook mass shooting, and him talking about how it was all a hoax cajoled a whole bunch of his fans into harassing people and accusing them of being actors, and there not having actually been a mass shooting in that shit. But Donald Trump, because he was a president of the United States, just like every other one, he killed tons of people in drone strikes and continued every single of the, I don't know, 5 or so different wars that the US has been waging. So he's probably responsible for the deaths of tens of thousands, if not more like, if not closer to 100,000 people. That's just a random estimate there. I don't know if that's totally true, but definitely at least thousands of people. And he's done all sorts of terrible shit. Not that he's like not that he's like fucking Orange Hitler or some shit. I don't agree with that. And a lot of lefties don't either, by the way. But uh, I think that he's still more, but responsible for more harm in the world than Alex Jones is, even though I'm not a fan of either of them. Although I like Alex Jones sometimes because he's so ridiculous that he's just hilarious. That's the only reason I watch him, or clips of people criticizing him sometimes, because he's so ridiculous that he's like a cartoon character.
Accountability for all that. Okay, fine. So Musk lifts the ban on Donald Trump, and the left goes insane. Totally insane. Because the idea is that it is actively dangerous for Donald Trump to be allowed to speak. Now, remember, this guy was the president of the...
Oh, I forgot. I was going to comment just on the title of this video. I'm sure he's being facetious. Elon made tweets mean again. I'm not sure. I don't remember whether he gets to this point, but Twitter is not any more or less mean whether Trump is on there or not, I don't think. Like, did Twitter get less mean when Trump got banned from Twitter? I really don't think so. I mean, a lot of people talk about how it's a cesspit. For me, it's an okay experience. I mostly follow like people who should post pictures of their dogs and hot girls. And if someone is the slightest bit rude to me, then I will mute them. I'm fine with having conversations, but why the fuck would I get into some dumb argument with some random person? Anyway, yeah, they obviously Elon didn't make tweets mean again, because they already were very mean, and Trump is far from the only mean person on Twitter. I don't think it's good for him I don't think he makes a positive contribution to the world with him being on Twitter, but at the same time, I think he should be allowed on. And then just if he actually does things that violate the community guidelines, delete those tweets instead of deleting people off of Twitter, even with people I disagree with. I don't think they should have been banned, like James Lindsay and Jordan Peterson, even though I find them to be I find them to make absolutely fucking atrocious and intellectually bankrupt arguments.
Of the United States. I didn't like a lot of the things he tweeted. I made very clear that I thought that what he said between the election and January 6th was not backed by evidence and was explicitly designed to foment chaos. I didn't like any of that stuff. But should he be on Twitter? Of course he should be on Twitter. He's a major political figure. It is insane not to have him.
Well, again, I mostly agree with what Ben Shapiro was saying there, I also think this argument is just stupid. He's the president. He's such a prestigious person, the world leader, the leader of the greatest country in the world. Then that means he should be on. I think that's stupid. But yeah, I still agree though that he should be allowed. He should be allowed on Twitter, and if he says terrible shit like denying the election, like Ben Shapiro mentions, then those specific tweets should be deleted at the most, or they can have those warning guidelines on them that they sometimes have, especially like to do with the Decepticon shit, aka the virus.
Have him on Twitter. But apparently it is an active danger to have him on Twitter, because if he says things that you don't like, things that you consider to be lies.
Ancestry DNA Festive Edition.
There we go.
Then obviously the world becomes a worse place and violence becomes more common. You, however, are pure as the driven snow, and you have never said anything that would lead anyone to do anything bad, because you're right, and he's very bad. And you know this because you're like God, and so you can actually determine that. Now, again, I'm not going to pretend that I like everything that Donald Trump says. I'm also not going to pretend
that was a very good argument, actually,
and that free speech spaces ought to be designed according to my whim. That is not the way that this works. So according to Politico, Musk said that Trump will be reinstated on Twitter, making good on his promise to lift the ban on the former president, who had been banished for violating the platform's rules against inciting violence. Now, again, that was always unbelievable that he had been banned for inciting violence, considering he did not call for violence. I know the left has been continually struggling with this.
With the January 6th stuff, though, he was speaking out of both sides of his mouth, so to speak. He was he was egging them on without actually literally directly threatening violence or provoking violence, but coming extremely as close as fucking possible to doing so. And then he downplayed it later on rather, and discouraged violence. But whether he encouraged violence or not, I think that's a little bit open to interpretation. I think technically, I remember looking at a transcript of what he said when I did a podcast with my friends Dusty and also Reed Nicewonder from Cordial Curiosity and their woke centrist channels, like a few days after January 6th. And if you look at the exact transcript of what he said, then he did not promote violence or egg on violence, but he came extremely fucking close to like violent language, like we're not going to back down, better go there and stop this tyranny, that kind of shit. I'm paraphrasing, of course, but that's the kind of thing that he did say.
But Donald Trump saying bad things between November 4th and January 6th did not actually mean that he was, quote unquote, inciting violence. To incite violence, you have to say, I wish for you to go and harm this person. It is not enough for you to say, that person is doing something wrong. I don't like what that person is doing and we should protest.
Okay, he's kind of downplaying the shit that Trump said there, but he's mostly right about his conclusion, I think.
Incitement is a very high legal standard. Does that mean that, I cannot like a lot of things. I don't like a lot of what the left says. I'm not going to blame Barack Obama for police officers getting shot in Dallas. I'm not going to blame Bernie Sanders for Congress people getting shot in Virginia. That's not the way this works. But the left will. And so the idea is that Donald Trump being on Twitter is...
it annoys me how he and people of his ilk always say the left as if this tiny percentage of whiny activist SJWs on Twitter represent this giant monolith called the left, even though even most socialists and progressives who I've seen are, well, at least the ones that I like and follow, which probably is at least the majority of the average person who isn't on Twitter all day long, are almost as pro free speech, if not just as pro free speech as Ben Shapiro, and are not calling for Trump to get banned and have a similar opinion as me. He's not like, they don't like that he tweets, but they don't think that he should be banned from Twitter either. So it's actually a tiny portion of the so-called left who are doing and saying what he claims, quote unquote, the left is doing.
Is a great danger to everyone. Musk had posted a Twitter poll on Friday asking users to weigh in on whether Trump should be allowed to return. Late on Saturday, the tech billionaire tweeted that based on the results of the poll, the people have spoken, Trump will be reinstated. As of Saturday night, Trump's account was live on the platform. Now, whether Trump decides to come back is another question, because Trump decided to sink some of his money, not too much, but some of his money into Truth Social. Truth Social does not have a huge user base. It has a fairly small user base, but if Trump starts tweeting on Twitter, it basically kills Truth Social. So Trump made a statement saying he is not coming back to Twitter. I cannot imagine that that's going to be true, considering that over at Truth Social, he has like 5 million followers. And on Twitter, after being reinstated for like a day, he has 70 million or something.
Truth Social.
It sounds like it would be in Trump's best interest to go back on Twitter. I don't particularly care whether he stays on Truth Social or goes back on Twitter, to be honest. I'm sure if he does, people will make YouTube videos all day long every day about mean shit that he said on Twitter. I'm going to do my best to not participate in that at all. So that'll be fun shit to ignore if that happens.
Is through the roof. It's doing phenomenally well. Truth Social has been very powerful, very strong.
Very strong.
And I'll be staying there, but I hear we're getting a big vote to also go back on Twitter. I don't see it because I don't see any reason for it.
Okay, so he says there's no reason for him to go back on Twitter because Truth Social is such a massive success. Not true, but bottom line is it's the left's reaction that's really telling right here. Get some more on this in just 1 second. First, I love spending the holidays with my family, and Warner's is giving away 2 black Angus meat special offer. That's free with your order. Good ranch for me on a kosher barbecue. It was magnific. I'm a steak aficionado. Ranchers.com/Ben for spreads dangerous lies. This is Sam Harris, the same Sam Harris who, by the way, said that he would not have cared if Hunter Biden killed and ate children. Maybe the story should have been suppressed before the election because, after all, Hunter Biden was not a danger to the Republican. Donald Trump was. he tweeted out, if you do bring him back, you shouldn't. Please have a terms of service that covers the deliberate spreading of dangerous lies and then apply it. He'll be off again within a week. Now, the question is, what constitutes a dangerous lie?
He's exaggerating a tiny little bit what Sam Harris said there, but I made my own video about how hyperbolic his claim was there. He literally said something along the lines of, he doesn't care if Hunter Biden has dead children in his bed, pictures on that infamous laptop of dead children in his basement. So he literally said that he was okay, it implied at least that he was okay with Hunter Biden having killed children and hidden them in a basement. He didn't say that he was a cannibal though. So he said some pretty fucking outrageous shit, but not quite claimed that cannibalism was okay.
What constitutes a dangerous lie? Well, I mean, I think that there are many dangerous lies on Twitter that are routinely allowed. In fact, some of them are trended on Twitter for months at a time. But again, there's no actual standard here for the left, except I don't like it. So
I would agree with him to an extent, but notice how he didn't list a single example there.
It shouldn't be exposed to the public view. I don't like a lot of things. They should still be exposed to the public view. So you have Adam Schiff, who for years paraded around saying that essentially the republic was in the hands of the Russians because Donald Trump had been rigged into the presidency by Russian collusion. And he's like, well, no, of course we shouldn't allow Trump back on Twitter because that'd be terrible.
I want to begin with the news overnight that Donald Trump.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, conservatives get hyperbolic about the Russiagate shit to an extent, but basically all the Russiagate shit turned out to be bullshit for a lot of different reasons, and a lot of lefties have pointed this out and researched it a lot too, like Matt Taibbi in particular, who's a great journalist, has researched the extent to which Russiagate is all bullshit, basically. That's a bit of an oversimplification, but that's basically the case. And yeah, a lot of, especially mainstream news anchors on like CNN and MSNBC were really fucking losing their fucking minds about how Trump was basically appointed as president by Russia, which is, like I said, almost entirely bullshit.
Trump has been reinstated by Elon Musk on Twitter. Watching the January 6th committee hearings, Trump's tweets were a big part of the story to be told. What do you think of him being back on Twitter?
I think it's a terrible mistake, and you're absolutely right. As we showed in the January 6th hearings, the president used that platform to incite that attack on the Capitol. His comments about the vice president, his own vice president, put Mike Pence's life in danger. He showed no remorse about that. He continues to lie about his actions on that day.
Again, trotting out Adam Schiff to talk about lies in public life and what.
I mean, he's probably lying, but I think he's mostly just saying a whole bunch of crazy shit that he actually believes about January 6th, because Trump is a whiny man-child and a baby, of course, but he probably is saying some lies in there somewhere.
What should and should not be allowed is a hell of a move by ABC News. Speaking of the news services, one of the funniest things was that CBS News over the weekend had said that they were going to halt activity on Twitter because of quote-unquote security concerns. They said after pausing for much of the weekend to assess the security concerns, CBS News and Stations is resuming its activity on Twitter as we continue to monitor the situation. So they stayed off of Twitter for a grand total of less than 40 hours. They were like, wow, Twitter is not a safe place. It's not a safe place. And 40 hours later, like, man, we still got to get some clicks. So maybe we should go back on Twitter. And this is the stupid game that we are supposed to believe they play, is that there's some sort of principle here. There is no principle. There really isn't. It's just a matter of, can we somehow pressure people into silencing?
True, but Elon Musk has no standard or no principle either.
Opinions that we don't like. And that really is a danger to the republic. See, the thing is this. There are people who are dangerous to human beings. Those people typically have a lot of red flags attached to them. A normal person who follows politics, I mean like a sane and rational person who follows politics, typically does not pick up guns and go start murdering random people at a gay club. That's not what a
That's true. Yep.
normal person does. Normal people do not go and shoot up schools. Normal people do not go and shoot up the Walmart. Almost always. In fact, I would venture to say, in every case I know of, publicly, except for one, the Las Vegas massacre, where we still don't know what the hell happened there, every single other mass shooting that we know of involves a person with violent tendencies who is known to police before. This is an easier pattern to spot and cull than it is to actually say entire broad-scale political movements that represent half the country are responsible for extremists who attach themselves to the movements, and then to the violent extremists who attach themselves to the extremists. And yet,
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. I would be skeptical of his claim that every single other mass shooting that I know of can be described that way, because he often gets the facts wrong, even though he's facts and logic guy. But it wouldn't surprise me if that is true.
the left is using what's happening out here to go after this. And that's the whole shtick. And that's why it's connected to what's happening with Trump. And so Jonathan Greenblatt over at the ADL, he tweeted out, and it's just, I'm sorry, it's a terrible tweet thread. For Elon Musk to allow Donald Trump back on Twitter ostensibly after a brief poll shows he is not remotely serious about safeguarding the platform from hate, harassment, and misinformation. Well, I mean, again, at least Musk is making himself accountable. He's like, listen, I'm making the call. Blame me if you don't like it. Greenblatt says, as we've said before, Trump used Twitter to foment intolerance, issue threats, and incite a violent attack against the U.S. government. Moreover, he has shown no indication he would do anything different if given the opportunity. When ADL and other Stop Hate for Profit leaders met with Musk, he committed to not replatform anyone regardless of stature until he installed a transparent, clear process that took into consideration the views of civil society. I mean, frankly, a public poll is a pretty transparent, clear process that takes into consideration the views of civil society.
Yeah, but that's the only person he did that with. He didn't do that with Alex Jones, again, who I'm not saying, well, like, I don't really care whether he's back on Twitter or not, but he hasn't, like, Elon Musk has a totally inconsistent standard. As far as I know, Trump is the only person he did that with. I could be totally wrong about that, but I think he's just operating on a whim in terms of those other people he banned and unbanned, like Kathy Griffin and that H3 podcast guy and others.
It's actually better than a backroom coterie of dudes with cigars figuring it out. Greenblatt said Elon Musk's decisions over the last month have been erratic and alarming, but this decision is dangerous and a threat to American democracy. Trump speaking on Twitter is a threat to American democracy. Is American democracy really that fragile?
And then he wants to cancel
really that
Twitter.
fragile? He said, we need to ask, is it time for Twitter to go? Elon Musk then tweeted back, hey, stop defaming me. Fair enough. And it wasn't, by the way, just the ADL. The NAACP did the same thing. The NAACP called for a complete pause by all advertisers still funding Twitter after the restored account access to Trump. So Trump being on Twitter means that all advertisers should stop advertising on Twitter. And the NAACP will use whatever political weight it still has in order to go after advertisers, presumably that spend their money on Twitter. Alrighty, guys, the rest of the show is continuing.
But the advertisers themselves also decided independently to go off of Twitter because it's become too much of a cesspit and a shit show with all the controversy surrounding Elon Musk, because the owner of a company is so fucking openly politicized, and they don't want to be associated with such open political association tied to the money that is tied to their companies. Most of it is not to do with being pressured by lefty groups to the sponsors being pressured by lefty groups to come off of Twitter, but the result is still the same.
Continuing right now, you're not going to want to miss it. We'll be getting into Attorney General Merrick Garland.
Okay, so yeah, all right, so yeah, like I said at the beginning there, I actually mostly agree with Ben Shapiro on this issue of Elon Musk letting Trump back on Twitter, which is surprising because I've made several videos criticizing his tremendously dumb takes. Like, I think my most recent one was criticizing the intellectually bankrupt and clearly unresearched arguments of him and Candace Owens, in which they were talking about how porn is literally destroying society. So yeah, check out my past videos criticizing Ben Shapiro more. Hope you appreciated this one, in which I mostly agreed with him, because I like to try to avoid being so politicized and tribal and ideological. Everyone is ideological in their own way, of course, but I like to admit when I agree with people who I think are really fucking stupid, when we occasionally agree, because contrary to the title of many different videos that people have made, as fucking stupid as some of the arguments are of people who I criticize, no one is wrong about everything. When there's a video called blah 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 is wrong about everything, that's never true, because like even Hitler said some correct things sometimes. Like vegetarians have something in common with Hitler because he was vegetarian. Doesn't mean he was a good person. Means if you are a vegetarian for moral reasons, which I am not, but some people are, then you have done so for the same reason as Hitler, which sure as fuck doesn't mean that there's any inherent connection between vegetarianism and Hitler, but it just means that even Hitler said something right occasionally, just like Ben Shapiro does too. And everyone, even people you disagree with the most, does occasionally too. Like Trump, I think he's almost entirely wrong about everything. Same with Alex Jones, but they occasionally are correct about stuff too. Like one example with Alex Jones, for example, is all the Jeffrey Epstein stuff. Although when Joe Rogan mentions that Alex Jones was right about the pedophile island and Jeffrey Epstein stuff, he never mentions that part of Alex Jones' conspiracy is that it's also the case that world leaders are shape-shifting lizard people who are also interdimensional child molesters who kidnap children to suck their blood and do DMT to commune with aliens in order to receive instructions in how to run the world, and all these other like fucking crazy bizarre layers to the conspiracy. But yeah, anyway, point is, no one is wrong about everything. It's good to acknowledge when you agree with people who you almost always disagree with, I think. And yeah, thanks everyone for watching. Share this video everywhere. Subscribe to the channel. Look forward to new videos. I'm probably going to next week, I think, put out another one, which is a clip from one of my podcasts in which I'm talking with my friends Dusty and Chris about Dusty's claim that it seems like Alexander Dugin, who's been called Putin's brain, and has said some really violent and terrible shit about people, but perhaps is less of an influence on Putin than some people say. Dusty's claim that it seems like he's a Russian Jordan Peterson, and my addition that it seems like he's a smarter Russian Jordan Peterson who talks less about religion and more about philosophy. So check that out too. And also this weekend, Dusty and my fellow fantasy nerd friend Tristram, we're going to do a season 1 review of the Lord of the Rings Rings of Power show. So check that out as well. And oh yeah, like I said too, check out my last videos. And I did one which was a comparison between the Minority Report book and movie before this one. I also talked recently about Matt Walsh and Joe Rogan disagreeing about gay marriage, so check all of that out. Check out my Patreon page. The link is in the description of the video as always. And like I always say, I love you all. Keep being the tiny beam of light that shines through the almost impenetrable darkness in the universe. And most importantly, always remember this: the funk cures all, and groove is in the heart. And Ben Shapiro is mostly dumb, but occasionally he says something right. And all right, thanks again, everyone, and adios until next time. Ta-ta, bitches.